All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Samach Vav and Maseches Pesachim. And the first blot, we just did the opening Mishnah of the sixth parak. So we got to the Gemara. We were discussing what happens when Erev Pesach, which obviously, as we were discussing, one has to bring the Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is brought on Erev Pesach and it's eaten on Leil Seder. So the question is, what happens when it comes on Shabbos? So we said most of the malachas that you can do from before, you should do before. But the korban itself is brought on Erev Pesach. We don't move that at all. So Zok the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan. Halacha zo nisalma mibnei b'seira. This halacha was missing, right? It was forgotten from the sons of B'seira. So Pamachas Chal Abba Soliyos b'Shabbos Shachav Loido Yom Pesach Doichas Shabbos Yom Lav. One time, Erev Pesach fell out like this year on Shabbos because Leil Seder was Saturday night, and they didn't know if the Korban Pesach was Doichas Shabbos or not. So Amru Klum Yesh Adam She'Yodei Im Pesach Doichas Shabbos Yom Lav. Does anybody know whether the Korban Pesach is Doichas Shabbos or not? Amru Lehem Adam Echad Yesh She'Ola Mi Bavel VeHillel Habavli Shemo. There's somebody who came from Bavel. His name is Hillel Habavli, Hillel, and Shishimesh Shnei Gedolei Ador Shemai v'Avtalia, and he was Meshamesh, and he served under two Gedolei Ador Shemai v'Avtalia. V'Yodei Pesach Leisach Shabbos Yom Lav, and he knows what the halach is when it comes to the Korban Pesach on Shabbos. So Shachav Karulo, they called and they asked him, Amarlo Klumata Yodei Pesach Doichas Shabbos Yom Lav. Do you know whether the Korban Pesach is Doichas Shabbos or not? So Amarlehem V'Chi Pesach Echad Yesh Lanu B'Shana Shedoichas Shabbos. Is there only one korban a year, right? When Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, that you have to go ahead and bring a korban on that day, which happens to be Shabbos. We have over 200 korbanos a year, right? Similar to Korban Pesach, that have to be brought on a specific day, and that day is Shabbos, right? The korban, there's at least 50 Shabbosim a year. The Korban Pesach, the Tamid is brought twice a day, so that's two. And then also on Shabbos you have the Musafin, it's another two, so that's at least four every Shabbos times 50 is at 200. Plus any times the Yontif falls out, you bring the Tamid also on Yontif and all the Musafin. Samarlo Minayin. So he says obviously it is Doicha Shabbos. Samarlo Minayin Lecha. How do you know that? Samarlem Nemar Moado Pesach v'Nemar Moado B'Tamid. It says the word Moado, right, in its time, right, in its moed, right, during its proper time when to do it. So it says moed the Pesach v'Nemar Moado B'Tamid Ma Moado Halom B'Tamid Doichas Shabbos Moado Halom Pesach Doichas Shabbos. Reason number one, just like it says the word Moado by Tamid, and the Tamid is Doichas Shabbos. So too, when it says Moado by the Korban Pesach, therefore that also is Doichas Shabbos if Erev Pesach falls out on a Saturday. The odd, and furthermore, Kavachemer, you can make a Kavachemer. Umad Tamid Shein Einish Kares Doichas Shabbos Pesach Sheinish Kares, and Adin Shedoichas Shabbos. Right, the Tamid, there is no Kares if one does not go ahead and bring the Tamid on that day. However, there is a special halacha, one of the few along with Bris Milah, that there's a mitzvah aseh to go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach, and if you do not go ahead and do this mitzvah aseh, then you're chayiv kares. So therefore, certainly we should go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach on Saturday in order to avoid the kares. Miyad immediately hashivu b'roish u'mineu nasi aleim. Immediately they said, "Oh, this Hillel, he knows this stuff." They appointed him to be the new nasi. And he went ahead and he started darshaning for them all the different halachas of Pesach because he was teaching them over. So he's chil mekantaran b'dvarim. So he began then sort of speaking harshly to them, right? In terms with words, and right? What caused, right? Me, I came from Bavel, you guys were here in there. So what caused, right, you guys to have nobody else available, and for me to come here and for you guys to appoint me as the nasi? Atzlus, right? Laziness. Because you guys didn't serve Shemai Avtalia, you didn't learn from the previous Gedolei Hador, and therefore from that Atzlus, because you guys didn't seek them out, that is what caused me to rise to become nasi. So Amrullah, Rabbi Shachach v'Lohevi So he said to him, what is the halacha if one does not go ahead and bring the knife, right? As we said, the shechita is doicha Shabbos. So what happens, and this is also discussed in our Mishnah, what happens if they forgot to bring the knife and you have to go ahead and carry it? So what do? Are you allowed to carry on Shabbos, right? There's no Eruv or anything, or from outside the Tchum. How can you go ahead and get a knife in the Mikdash? So he said to them, Halacha zu shamati v'shachachti. He says, I actually forgot it. Says Hillel, I forgot it. I once learned it and I forgot it. I'll put my trust in Klal and Bnei Yisrael, right? And even though they might not be Nevi'im, they are the sons of Nevi'im, and they will have merit for somehow, some way to figure out the proper halacha because they have the schus of being Bnei Nevi'im. So hey lamachar, so Bnei hey, so lamachar misha pischo tala teichlo b'tzamaro. So the next day, what happened? What did people do? Right? They didn't have their halachas. So people who had, there's basically different types of animals. One can bring as Korban Pesach. They used sheep. So they went ahead and they took the knife and they basically put it in the wool of the animal, the sheep. There's people like with thick hair. They leave their comb in their hair, right? So they put the knife in the wool of the animal, and the animal walked basically carrying the knife. And Misha Pesach Gedi. And if someone who had a Gedi, right, a goat, right, that doesn't have fur, but it has horns. So they put it between his horns, basically stuck it in there, and the animal walked it there. And therefore, and Ra and Hillel saw Ra Ma'asav and Iskar halacha, and he says, and he saw the halacha. He says, yeah. Yes, this is the halacha from Shammai and Avtali. In other words, he saw the people doing it, and he says, that's exactly what the halacha is. So Amar, now we're going to sort of break down this brayso. So Omar Nemar Moado b'Pesach v'Nemar Moado b'Tamid. So it says the word Moed by Pesach, and it says the word Moado b'Tamid Moado Hamar b'Tamid doichas Shabbos, Moado Hamar b'Pesach doichas Shabbos. So just like the Moed, right, the Korban Tamid, right, is brought on a Saturday, even though you're not allowed to shech normally on Shabbos, but you're allowed to shech the Korban Tamid on Shabbos. So too, you can go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach that falls out on Shabbos. The Tamid Gufim, and how do you know the Tamid itself can go ahead? You can offer it on Saturday, the Dachi Shabbos. Say, if it's because it has the word Moado in it, Pesach Nami Haksiv Be Moado. Well, the word Korban Pesach, we knew it, and by Pesach Ela Moado Lo Mashmele, Hakanami Moado Lo Mashmele, and by Korban Pesach we had no idea. We didn't just say, I know the Korban Pesach is brought on a Saturday. Why? Because it says Moado. We didn't say that. So obviously the word B'moado doesn't teach you that it overrides Shabbos. So the question is, okay, how do we know that the Talmud overrides Shabbos? Shabbos b'Shabboso al olos hatamid. It says over there the olah of Shabbos al olos hatamid. So it says over there that it mentions specifically that it's brought on Shabbos. Michlal. Olah de Tamid karva b'Shabbos. So we learn from there that the Olah of Tamid is brought on Shabbos, and since that is brought on Shabbos, so too we learn the Gezer Shava of Moado to Korban Pesach that it's also brought on Shabbos. And Omar, and then we said also the Od, and furthermore, even if you don't have the Gezer Shava, you have a Kal V'Chaimer. Ma Tamid Shein Einish Kares Derech Shabbos Pesach Shonos Kares Shein Adij Derech Shabbos. By the Korban Tamid, which overrides Shabbos, never, even though there is no Chiv Kares. So, however, by the Korban Pesach, there is an Isser Kares. Certainly, that should be Derech Shabbos. However, you can actually ask, and I said maybe not such a good Kavachomer. Why? Right? The Tamid is brought every day. Right, and that's a reason to perhaps have it override Shabbos. The Korban Pesach is not brought every day, and also it's completely consumed. So therefore, since it completely goes on the Mizbeach and it is brought every day, maybe that's more of a reason for it to be Deicha Shabbos, and maybe Dafka the Tamid is Deicha Shabbos and not the Korban Pesach, and therefore maybe that Kal V'Chomer is not so good. So the Gemara says, Kal V'Chomer Amar Lahu Bereisha. So okay, so the question was, why did you bring Gezer Shava and then Kal V'Chomer? So he said no. I said, no, first they brought the Kal V'Chomer. The Bryce was really in the wrong order. First they brought the Kal V'Chomer that says, the Talmud doesn't have Kares, the Korban Pesach does. Certainly it should be Deicha Shabbos. But they said, no. Maybe the Talmud is Deicha Shabbos because it's brought every day, and that's the reason why it's Deicha Shabbos. And therefore, since there was a question on the Kal V'Chomer, that's the reason why they used the Gezer Shava of Moado. Well, if that's the case, if you have a Gezer Shava, why did you bring the Kal V'Chomer in the first place? Or secondly, why did you bring it? He said, right to you guys. Bishlam Gzera Shava. I understand if you don't have the Gzera Shava like Gemisu, the Enadam done Gzera Shava Yatsa, because a person can't just go ahead and make a Gzera Shava on his own. He can't just say, oh, this word is here and the same word appears there, therefore I can learn the same together. No, you need a Masorah for Gzera Shava. So even if you didn't have this Masorah of this Gzera Shava of Mado, then you can go ahead and bring this Kavachimer because Karban Pesach carries a Kares. So El Kavachimer doesn't dami Yatzmo. All right, nevertheless, you guys could have made your own kavachimer and amarle kavachimer perchahu. No, the reason why we didn't bring the kavachimer, we didn't know, is because of the kasha that perhaps the Talmud overrides, not because it has the severity of its of a kares, but perhaps because it is something which is done every day. Fine. Bottom line in Samach Vav and Aleph. Omer Mar, once again, continuing to quote this brisa Lamachar. The next day, so they didn't know what to do with the knives, so that people happened to go ahead and put the knives in the wool of their sheep or in the horns of their goats. To the page, the top. Well, first of all, I don't understand. If the person set aside this animal as hektish as his current Pesach, so how could he go ahead and use an animal which was set aside as kachim to go ahead and do avoda for him, to carry stuff for him, right? So the answer is no. Like Hillel, the time of the Brayso, Amar Laval Hillel, Miyama Mal Adam Abalaso. Throughout his life, no one ever had me'ilah. Right, me'ilah is the forbidden benefit one derives from an animal which was set aside as hektish. Right? Rather, what's the halacha there? Rather, they go ahead and they bring the animal as chulin. In other words, they don't designate the animal as hektish in their house, right? In order to prevent the person violating me'ilah. So what do? They brought an animal to the mikdash, and only then over there, mamish, right before they were offered, then they were makdish it, and immediately they would go ahead and offer it, and therefore there was no time for people to do milah. So to over here, the animal was not made hektish in their homes, and then they used this hektish animal to go ahead and carry the knife. Rather, they brought regular chulin animals to the mikdash. Then, while they're in the base of mikdash, right before they're going to go ahead and offer as a Karban Pesach, then they would go makdish the animal, and then they would do that, and therefore they wouldn't have violated a problem of using hektish to go ahead and carry knives. So I go ask the Shabbos, heichi matzi makdish. How could he go ahead and be makdish animal Shabbos? But tonight we go to the Mishnah. One cannot go ahead and be makdish an animal on Shabbat, or you can't be makdish or erech. And erech vow is basically a person says, I will bring the value of an individual, or you can't do a charama, right? Cherem is basically you have the value of an object, whether it goes to the mikdash, to the kohanim. So vei machrimin, vei magvim truma or maestros, and you can't go ahead and take out truma meiser kol elu b'yontif. They say all these halachas, you can't do that on Shabbos. Amru and kavachimer b'Shabbos, and certainly you can't do it on Yontif, and certainly on Shabbos. So once again, we see over here, you can't be makdish something on Shabbos, right? You can't be makdish because you're basically, that's similar to basically doing business transactions, and in order to avoid that, so the Rabbani can't do it. So the question is, if it's prohibited to go ahead and be makdish on Shabbos, so they brought their animals there on Shabbos in order not to carry it, and then how could they be makdish it? They had to be makdish from before Shabbos. If they were makdish before Shabbos, then the animal is carrying their knives for them, which would be forbidden to go ahead and use hektish to carry your stuff. So Gemara answers, Hani mili b'chayvas shein kavul henzman. The only time we say that you can't be makdish something is if it's something that is not there's no chiyuv to bring it on that day. Right? A person wants to bring a toda or some sort of shlamim. So those things, since there's not obligatory time, therefore those things you can't be makdish about. But something which has a specific zman, like the tamid or the musafin or the Karban Pesach, makdishin, those you are allowed to be makdish. It's not a violation of anything. The Omar Rabbi Yechon, as Rabbi Yechon says, makdish adam as pischal b'Shabbos v'chagigaso b'Yontif. A person can't be makdish his Karban Pesach on Shabbos and his chagiga, which has to be brought on Yontif. All right, so that answered that question. Wait, we have another problem. There's halacha that on Shabbos, right, your animal, forget the issue of being hektish, your animal can't do malacha for you, right? You can't lead your animal. So, I'm not carrying anything, just my donkey's carrying. You can't do that. You can't lead an animal to carry for you. So how could over here he basically lead his animal to go ahead and carry his knife for him to the mikdash? So my answer is no. Mechamer klacher yad. It's an issue of being mechamer klacher yad. In other words, he didn't do it in the normal way. The normal way is to put a saddle on it or to put bags on it and for it to carry it. Since you stuck the knife in the wool or you put it in the horns, that's not the normal way. And therefore, since it's only a shvus, right, and it's done klacher yad, therefore it's permitted b'makom mitzvahs or sunsi. So, okay, maybe it's not Isur Deraisa. However, Isur Midrabanan Miha Ika shouldn't be an Isur Derabanan. So, Hainu the Kaboy Mine. This is like that. That's like what it said later on. Davar sheyesh lehetem in a Torah. Something that has a hetem in a Torah. Udavar shus aimei lefanav. Right now, as Midraisa, it's mutter, but Midrabanan, it's usur. Like to go ahead and have your animal care for you klacher yad. All right. Can you go ahead and do it? Have your animal carry, which is derabanan. Can you go ahead and do that in an abnormal way, b'makom mitzvah, in the case of a mitzvah, which is basically our case, right? Can you go ahead and have your animal, which is only derabanan, to carry it, right? It's not you doing it; it's your animal doing it, so that's only derabanan. And then to do it in an abnormal way, which is kalacher yad, in a place where there's a mitzvah, i.e., I need to bring a knife for the purpose of the Karban Pesach. What's the halacha there? And on that said Hillel, Omar lahen halacha zu shemati. This one I heard v'shachachti, but however I forgot it. Elahi nichul Yisrael yimei navim heim b'nei navim, right? But let's rely on bnei Yisrael, because even though they're not navim, they are the sons of navim, and somehow it will work its way out. And we saw that it did, because people started doing it and they remembered, that's the halacha. In other words, so to go ahead and violate a dirabanan, kalayacher yad, right, doing it with a shinui in a makom mitzvah, that is mutter, and that was what Hillel recalled once he saw people doing it. That's what he saw from Shemai Vev Talia. Fine, 2 dots. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav Kol Hamis Yoher, a person who becomes haughty a little bit, gaiva, im chacham hu, chachmasu misalekas imeno. If he's a chacham, then his chachma will leave him. He'll forget it temporarily. Im navi hu, if he's a navi, nevuasa misalekas, his nevu will leave him. Misalekas imeno. So im chacham hu, chachmasu misalekas imeno. If he's a chacham, then his wisdom will leave him temporarily. And that we learned from Hillel. From this case of Hillel. Why? Daramar, he said over there, he's chil mekatrin b'dvarim. He started to go ahead and say, hey, why did I have to become the Nasi, right? Why couldn't you guys do it? You guys were lazy. You didn't serve Shemaya and Avtalion just like I did, right? And then it says he forgot the halacha. Why did he forget his halacha? Because it was a little shtickle mixas kiyura, right? It was a little bit of haughtiness, and that's the reason why he forgot his chapa. And then it says, and if one is a navi, the nevuah will temporarily leave them. That is from, we see that from Dvorah. It says over there by the Shira, Dvorah says, Chaldu parzah b'Yisrael, Chaldu, right? Ad shekamti Dvorah, shekamti im b'Yisrael. And the people left the cities, and the people were around until Mother Dvorah came. So it was a shtickle bit of gaiva that she basically said, right? The other Navim weren't good enough until I came along. Then it says Uri Devara Uri Shir Divrei Shir. Then it says basically that wake Devora wake. Your nevuah come back to you. So we see over here that her nevuah temporarily left her because of miktas kiyura. And Reish Lakish Amar similarly, when Reish Lakish says Kol Adam shekois, if a person becomes angry, his wisdom will leave him. Im navihu, and if he's a navi, nevuah so his nevuah will leave him. So if he's a Talmid Chacham and he becomes angry, there's Chacham will leave him. Moshe, we see it from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Chassidus pasuk says, "Vayiktov Moshe and Moshe became upset when they returned from the war. When they left, they didn't kill everybody. They left the women. The Ksiv Vayomer Elazar HaKohen Al Anshe Hatzava Habayim Melchama Zeis Chuka HaTorah Asher Tziva Hashem as Moshe. Right, and then when it comes to the halachas. Who taught the halachas? It wasn't Moshe. It was Elazar Kohen. So we see that Moshe temporarily forgot the chachma, right, because of the anger that he got with Bnei Yisrael. Michal the Moshe Aliyah Mimena. We see that Moshe it was hidden from him. He temporarily forgot it. And if he's a navi and a person gets angry, then his nevuah leaves him. Elisha, that is learned from Elisha, the navi. The Chassidus says over there. So he says, if it wasn't for right, the face of Yehoshaphat the king, then basically I would not look at you, right? So he was saying that to Yehoram. And basically, he was angry with Yehoram, and he says he was basically, chastising him and yelling at him. And he says, if it wasn't for him, then I wouldn't be looking at you. So he was angry at him. Stephen says over there, then it says over there, someone go ahead and play the music, right? Play the harp, right? Or say the shira in order for me to go ahead and get my nevuah back. So we see that once again, he got angry, and therefore his nevuah temporarily left Elisha. And then he said, okay, I need my nevuah to come back. Someone play music, and then, the nevuah will come back. So we see from anger, the nevuah was a loss from him. Rabbi Mani Bar Patish Kol Shekois Afilu Paiskin Lav Gedulim Min Hashemayim Maridun Oso. Whoever becomes angry, then even if they were destined to go ahead and have some gedula, greatness bestowed upon them from the heavens, Maridin Oiso, he gets lowered from it, he loses it. We know that from Eliav, which was one of the brothers of David HaMelech. Shnamar Zabasik says, Vayichar af Eliav David, and Eliav became angry with David. Vayamir Lama Ze Yerada V'Yamid Tashta Me'at Hatzon. So he says over there, he became angry with David HaMelech. He says, why'd you come down? Why'd you leave the sheep? Right? I know you only came for war, and that was in your heart. And basically, he became angry with Eliab. Became angry with David HaMelech. And this is prior to David becoming, making king, before Shmuel approached him. And when Shmuel came to go ahead and make one of them the next king, right, to anoint them. So Bekulu Ksif, all the other brothers says Loi Bezebach Hashem. Hashem did not choose this one. However, when it came to Eliav, then Ksif, it says he wasn't treated like the other brothers. He was treated differently. Vayomer Hashem al Shmuel, and Hashem to Shmuel. Al tabit al mareyu v'al kamasa ki ma'astinu. He says, don't look at him. He's not the one to anoint, right? Because Hashem became disgusted with him. So we see that he wasn't treated like the other brothers. Rather, Hashem was disgusted. Michlal the havi rachim le adaina. Right? That until now, right, he had rachim towards Eliav. Now, perhaps he was supposed to be the one that Shmuel was supposed to anoint. But we see from his anger that he took out upon David. Right. Therefore, even though he was supposed to be elevated and raised to Gedula, he was lowered down. Fine. 2 dots. We are the first wide line at the bottom, 6 lines from the bottom. So now get back from our distraction. So we're talking about the Tamid and the Korban Pesach. That both of them can be brought on Shabbos. Now, Ashkan Tamid Pesach the Doich Shabbos. We see that the two of them can be Doich Shabbos. The Doich Tuma Menolan. So we mentioned in passing until now, where do we know that they can be Doich Tuma, right? If the Tamid can be brought, the Tuma, right? If the one bringing it is brought, it's okay, it works. And where do we know? And the Korban Pesach, if most of Bnei Yisrael is Tameh, it can be brought. They can all bring on that day. So where do we know that from? So Menolan. So Amrlei Ki Heich Dilav Pesach Mitamid LeInyan Shabbos. Hakanami Yoliv Tamid Pesach LeInyan Tuma. Just like we learned the Korban Pesach is Doicha Shabbos from the Tamid, so we learn that the Tamid is Doicha Tuma from the Korban Pesach. Pesach Guvei Menolan, and Pesach itself, how do we know that? So Rabbi Yefer and Damar the pasuk says, Ish ki yatami lenefesh. It says if somebody is tami nefesh, so and then he says he has to go ahead and bring Pesach Sheni. So Ish nidchel Pesach Sheni, the ain't sibur nidchel Pesach Sheni. It only says an Ish, an individual. So if an individual is tame, then he has to go ahead and wait a month later for Pesach Sheni. However, if it's not Ish, but it's the Tzibor, if everybody is tame or a majority, then they all bring Batuma on the 14th. Ella Abdi Betuma, right? They ain't somebody who Pesach Sheni, Ella Abdi Tuma. So Amri Le, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shleker said Rabbi Yochanan, Seima Ish Nidchel Pesach Sheni, Sibur Lesu Takanasa Lo Pesach Rishon Lo Pesach Sheni. Well, I have a question. Maybe it means that if an individual becomes Tameh, then he has to bring Pesach Sheni. But if everybody's Tameh, then not only can they not bring now, they don't even get Pesach Sheni. So maybe that's what it means. Maybe the only heter is maybe you can never bring a betuma. And if it's only individual, then the individuals can bring Pesach Sheni. But if it's the tzibur, then there's less like takanasa. There is no way to fix it. Maybe that's the pshat of the pasuk. Se'ela, Amar Rav Shimon Lakish. Okay, we'll learn from another pasuk. Mahacha. It says, and they sent out from the machana called tzarua. Anybody who has tzaras, v'chol zav, or someone who is a zav, right? He's tamei, v'chol tamei lenefesh, and also somebody who came from tumas meis. Yamir tamei meisim. So I understand why they tell him to go ahead and leave and exit the machana. All right. So it says over there, why don't you say, so yamir tamei meisim, yamir zavi mitzarim? Why don't you just go ahead and say the tummy mace has to leave, and you don't need to say a zav or somebody who is a metzora, right? Because those people, right? Vani Omer, and I'll say, just say im tummy mace mishtachin. If we send out the people who are tummy mace, zav metzora lo koshkin. Certainly, we send out someone who's a zav and the metzora. Why? Because zav and metzora, they themselves are tummy, right? There's more chumras when it comes to a zav or metzora to be metame others than it is by a person who he himself is a tummy mace, right? So if we tell a tummy mace to leave the machana, certainly the zav and the mitzvah have to leave the machana, and therefore there's no reason to say all three. So why did you say all three? Why did the pasuk say kol tzaruf, kol zav, kol tummy lenefesh? Ella, so Ella, Gemara says top of the page, Ella yesh l'chasha shezav mitzvah mishtauchin ve'ein tummy mace mishtauchin. Rather, it comes to teach you that there is a time when a zav and a mitzvah they are sent, but a tummy mace is not sent. Vase is that, and when is that? That is Pesach haba batuma. That's a Pesach when the majority of the people are tummy. So if the majority of people are tummy, then we don't send them out to the machana, but a zav and a mitzora are sent out of the machana. So in other words, when it comes to a zav and mitzora, there is no heter for that ever to be brought. But however, tummy mace, we say that there is a time when people who are tummy are not sent out of the machana. When is that? When the tzibur is the tzibur is the majority tamei, and therefore they're allowed to go ahead and bring the Karban Pesach on Pesach Rishon. Therefore, we see the Karban Pesach is doicha tuma, and just like Karban Pesach is doicha tuma, b'tzibur, so too the Talmud is doicha tuma b'tzibur. All right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll pick up from Amar Abaye, and everyone have a wonderful day and drive safely. Shkoyach.